Today we'll learn how to attack in true romantic style, launching a devastating attack on the enemy king when your opponent neglects development and gets greedy. To illustrate this, we'll examine a 20-move masterpiece by Richard Reti, and I'll challenge you to find his brilliant romantic sacrifices. So let's dive in. Reti's opponent, Zoltan won Balla, starts with e4, Reti replies with e5, and after knight f3, knight c6, white goes for the Spanish opening, bishop b5. And instead of the common lines, Reti plays the sharp move. He opts for the sharpest continuation, f5, which is of course a little bit risky because by playing f5 black has weakened his kingside, but black wants to fight for the initiative, so he's attacking the pawn and threatening to capture it, so white must do something about it. Capturing on f5 doesn't work because in this case black indeed manages to seize the initiative. The pawn moves forward and it turns out that the white knight doesn't have any good squares to move. All these squares are controlled by black. White can pin the black pawn of course, but black can unpin it, renewing the threat. The knight is under attack, so white must either retreat the knight to the initial square or, in order to get access over the d4 square, he must give up his most valuable piece, the Spanish bishop, after which black gets the advantage of two bishops and a strong pawn, so black is slightly better. For this reason, e takes f doesn't work and white usually defends his pawn, either by knight c3 or, as is the case in our game, d3. Reti develops the king's knight, increasing the pressure on the e4 pawn, and white simply castles kingside. And it turns out that black cannot win a pawn, because his king is still in the center. He can capture once, but he cannot capture for the second time to win the pawn, because in this case the white pawn disappears from e4, that means the e-file now is half open, and either by playing queen e2 or rook e1, white starts a very strong attack. After the black knight retreats, white gets the pawn back and he initiates a strong attack on the black king who is stuck in the center. And black cannot hold his knight on e4 by playing d5, because in this case the knight becomes pinned and white gets the pawn back, creating terrible threats such as capturing on c6 or queen h5 check, and of course g6 would run into knight takes g6, white is winning. For this reason, Reti doesn't capture twice on e4, instead he continues his development, bishop c5. The bishop is greatly placed on c5 and black is ready to castle kingside. So, what should white do now? The engine recommends either e takes f, or it recommends to develop the queenside, let's say with knight c3. In both cases, black would reply with castling kingside, and white would have retained a slight advantage. But instead of these moves, knight c3 or e takes f, white notices that by playing f5, black has weakened his kingside, in particular this diagonal, and black is ready to castle. So to prevent black from castling, white violates the opening principles. Instead of developing his queenside, he moves the already developed piece for the second time, bishop c4, taking this diagonal under control, preventing black from castling, but now black manages to equalize. So he plays d6, opening the bishop's diagonal and, which is very important, defending the e5 pawn with the d6 pawn. That means the c6 knight doesn't need to keep an eye on this pawn anymore. And next move, black might play knight a5, attacking the bishop, and he would exchange his knight for white's most valuable piece, after which black will get the advantage of two bishops, and he would also manage to castle kingside. So what should white do? The engine recommends, so I will show you a couple of recommendations by engine. So the one move is a4 in order to parry the threat of knight a5. Now it doesn't make much sense because that was the idea behind a4, to vacate the a2 square for the bishop. The bishop retreats and white is better. Another recommendation is knight d2, developing the queenside, or white can simply capture on f5. So in all these variations, the position would have remained more or less equal, but white notices that the f7 square is also weak. The bishop controls this square, so he plays knight g1. 5. And we have reached our first critical position. White has broken the opening principles twice. First he moved the bishop for the second time, and now he moves the knight for the second time. But white has created an immediate threat. Of course, the threat is knight f7 with a fork winning the rook. So, what should black do about this threat? You can pause the video and try to find how Reti punishes his opponent for neglecting development and for his greediness. Reti sacrifices the rook in order to launch a romantic attack on the enemy king. He plays f4, opening the light squared bishop's diagonal, and the pawn becomes very strong. It puts pressure on white's king side and also restricts the bishop. So what should white do? Of course, white invaded f7. He executed his threat. You might think, why not bishop f7 check to deprive black of the opportunity to castle kingside, but it doesn't work, because after king e7, it's true, black loses the right to castle, but his king is absolutely safe because the center is closed and white hasn't developed his pieces to create any threats to the enemy king. Besides that, the opposite is the case. Black has a threat of h6, kicking out the knight, followed by king takes f7, so white must spend another tempo to save his bishop, let's say bishop b3, after which black develops his last minor piece with a tempo, and as you can see, white hasn't succeeded in winning material, so white has only 2 developed pieces, while black has developed all minor pieces, so black seizes the initiative for free. For this reason, instead of bishop f7 check, white plays knight f7 with a fork. And of course, black must save the queen and white wins a rook. After which Reti develops his last minor piece with a tempo, and we can look at the result now. Of course, white is up a rook, but his queen side isn't developed. His knight, which is the main defender, usually the main defender of the king, so this knight is usually placed on f3. This knight is out of play now in the corner of the board, and black has developed all his pieces, so black has enormous activity, and the white queen is under attack, and white cannot even play f3 because the pawn is pinned by the great dark squared bishop. So white must save his queen. He plays queen d2, and we have reached the second critical position. Of course, black has a great lead in development, but he must play energetically and create immediate threats. Otherwise, white might develop his queen side and defend his position. So you can pause the video and try to find how Reti continues his romantic attack. To create the immediate threats, Reti centralizes the knight, and the threat is knight f3 check with a fork, after which white would be forced to capture the knight and his kingside would be demolished. For example, let's say white plays c3, which is a mistake, then black will execute his threat. Knight f3 check, to save the queen, white must capture the knight, but after bishop takes f3, there is nothing white can do against terrible threats, terrible checkmating threats, such as knight takes e4, which would open the black queen's diagonal, and queen g5 checkmate would threaten. Besides that, the white queen would fall under attack, or black can simply play queen d7, and there isn't much white can do against queen g4 checkmate or queen h3. So for this reason, c3 doesn't work, and white must defend against this terrible threat of knight f3 check. Of course, he cannot play f3, because this diagonal would get exposed and knight takes f3, double discovered check would follow, and white is losing the queen. For this reason, white plays king h1, so that knight f3 doesn't fork anymore. Besides that, which is very important, by playing king h1, white has moved his king away from this diagonal. That means he is ready to play f3. And if he manages to play f3 next move, he would solve all his problems, and he would actually be better. So he would parry the immediate threats, and he would remain with an extra rook. And as you have as you might have already guessed, to prevent f3, Reti still plays knight f3, although it comes without a fork, without a check. So the knight still jumps on f3 with a tempo, the queen is under attack, and it comes closer to the white king, the h2 pawn. It's also eyeing the h2 pawn, and it turns out that white cannot actually capture this knight because of bishop takes f3 check, and again, as we already know, knight takes e4 would attack the queen and threaten queen g5 checkmate. So what should white do? He must save his queen. He would love to keep the queen close to the king side, but the queen simply doesn't have squares. This square, the e1 square, is controlled by the knight. These two squares are controlled by the bishop. Let's say if white plays queen e2, he's losing on the spot because of simple knight takes h2 with the discovered attack on the queen. The knight defends the bishop, so the queen is under attack, the rook is under attack, knight h5 opening the queen's way to h4, as the h file is open would be deadly, so black is winning. For this reason, white cannot keep his queen close to the king side, so the queen must move far away. She moves to a5. Now not only the knight, the queen is also out of play, and the king has remained all alone on the king side. So we have reached another critical position. How should black continue his attack in the most effective way? So, of course, black must bring his queen into the attack. And to do that, Reti plays knight takes e4, opening the queen's way to h4 and also attacking the f2 pawn for the second time. The knight is untouchable. After d takes e, black executes his main threat, the queen invades, threatening checkmate in 1, and there is nothing white can do to prevent the checkmate. Let's say if he plays h3, of course, black would capture, demolishing white's king side. He simply threatens to move the bishop back with the checkmate in 1. Neither can white capture the knight, of course. We already know this leads to checkmate. For this reason, after knight takes e4, in order to defend against black's main threat, queen h4, white plays g3, taking this square under control, but now, of course, the knight captures on f2 with a check. So white has two moves, rook takes f2 or king g2. First, let's look at king g2. What happens in this case? Can you find a forced checkmate in 5 moves? In order to start a deadly king hunt, black would have sacrificed the knight. He would have played bishop h3 check. The bishop, of course, is untouchable. The knight defends it. The knight is also untouchable. It's defended by the bishop, so white must capture the knight. But in this case, e4 check would follow. Now, if the king captures on f4, queen f6 checkmate would follow. If the pawn captures on e4, queen takes e4, again, checkmate in 1 move would follow. So the only move is d takes e, queen takes e4, checkmate, of course. So the only move is king e2, but in this case, e takes d, discovered, double, check, and checkmate in a few moves would follow. So for this reason, king g2 doesn't work, so white must give up the exchange and at least get rid of one of the attacking pieces. Rook takes f2. Bishop takes f2. Now black threatens to capture twice on g3, eliminating this pawn and invade the h4 square, which would be deadly. For this reason, king g2. Defending the g3 pawn and attacking the bishop. Reti captures on g3, defending his bishop, but white recaptures. Now the pawn is defended and the bishop is under attack. So we have reached another critical position. What next? The king has defended the pawn and the bishop is under attack. How should black continue his attack? So, of course, when you have so many attacking pieces, which are attacking the lonely king, it's very easy to sacrifice pieces. So Reti sacrifices the bishop in order to remove the last defender of the white king, the g3 pawn. Bishop takes g3. And it turns out that the bishop is untouchable. If king takes g3, that runs into checkmate in 3 moves. Queen h4 check, queen h2, followed by bishop h3 checkmate. For this reason, white tries his last chance. Queen b5 check follows. c6 and queen b4, eyeing the d6 pawn, which is defended only by the queen, but Reti still invades the h4 square. So how often do we see such positions? So the white king, the lonely white king, is attacked by the queen, 2 bishops, and the knight. And black threatens queen h3 checkmate, of course, checkmate in 1. So bishop f7 check follows. So all white can hope for are checks. And black still must play precisely. For example, king f8 would be a terrible mistake because of queen takes d6 check and white is winning. But of course Reti plays king e7 instead. The pawn is defended, letting white capture on b7 with a check, also attacking the rook, but black doesn't need this rook. So after king f6 there are no more checks. Queen h3 checkmate is still threatened, the white pieces cannot help his king, and if the king tries to run away, he still gets checkmated in 2 moves. For this reason, in this position, white resigned. And now I recommend watching another romantic attack, this time Mikhail Chigorin's 14-move masterpiece, where he sacrificed his queen as early as move 10. But first, I'd be grateful if you like this video, write comments, share and subscribe, because all this is really helpful for the channel growth.